All right, thank you guys. Florida takes on Tennessee, and that's going to be a 6 o'clock Eastern start time on Wednesday, January 26, 2022. Tennessee's -8 with the total at 135.5. Now, I went 5-0 in my personal bets on BrockPage.com on Monday, and that improved our record to 3-0 in our last three $1.99 daily best plays in that category. We also improved to 3-0 in our last three board member tier package picks following Monday's sports wagering action as well. And just remember, guys, board members get access to every single bet that I make on that website all the way through the end of January. And of course, the link for both of those packages is located in the description section below. Now, Tennessee's gotten the W in 7 out of their last 10 ball games. And they've also been pretty good covering the point spread here lately, too. They're 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 ball games, and they've covered in 64% of their home games as well. Now, Santiago Vescovi, he's scoring over 14 points a game, and he's drilling nearly 40% of his three-pointers. The Vols are currently 10-1 straight up at home this year, and they're limiting their competition to just 56 points a game at the Thompson Bowling Arena. These guys have been very good defensively at home. Just all around, a pretty well-rounded ball club. Now they're taking on a Florida team who lost 5 out of their last 8 themselves, and they're making just 28% of their three-pointers on the road. Now, equally as bad, the Gators are scoring only 68 points a game when they travel. And when it comes to the injury report in this one, Colin Castleton is battling a shoulder injury for Florida. That is huge. If you're firing a bet on this game, you got to keep an eye on his status. It actually looks like he's going to be sitting this one out here on Wednesday. And when it comes to the total in this one, the Gators went 4-1 to the under in their last 5 ball games. Meanwhile, Tennessee 64% to the under on their home court. I'm going to lean toward Tennessee -8 and the under 135.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Creighton versus Butler, 6:30 East. Creighton's -5.5, totals 125 and a hook. Now the Blue Jays covered the number in 5 out of their last 6 ball games, and those were covers against the likes of DePaul, St. John's, and Villanova. Now Creighton also allows just 65 points a game, and they're limiting their competition to only 39% shooting from the field. Now, scoring-wise, Alex O'Connell is drilling nearly 40% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging over 13 points a game. They're taking on a Butler team who's one of the worst offensive teams in the country. They're scoring only 61 points a game at home, and they've been horrible at rebounding offensively. Now, the Bulldogs are currently on a 4-game losing streak, and they also failed to cover in 7 out of their last 10. Now, total-wise, Butler saw unders recently against Georgetown, Seton Hall, and DePaul. Meanwhile, Creighton went 7-3 to the under in their last 10. I'm going to lean toward Creighton -5.5 and the under 125 and a hook. Next matchup, it is going to be Northwestern versus Michigan, 6:30 Eastern tip-off. Michigan's -7.5 with the total at 142. Now, the Wolverines won their last 2 straight, and they've played very good defensively at home. As a matter of fact, the Wolverines are limiting their opponents to just 25% shooting from three-land at the Chrysler Center. They're also in the top 15 in the country in defensive boards. Now, scoring-wise, Hunter Dickinson scoring 17 points a game. He's also draining nearly 40% of his three-pointers. Now, when it comes to shooting from the field, Michigan's also knocking down 48% of their field goals. Now, they're taking on a Northwestern club who lost 6 out of their last 7 ball games themselves, and they successfully covered the point spread just once during that stretch. Now, the Wildcats are giving up way too many points on the road here. They're allowing nearly 76 points a game when traveling, and their opponents are knocking down over 41% of their three-pointers against them in that same category. That is a remarkable trend. If your book is offering 3-point props on that game, you may want to think about that. Once again, they're letting their opponents knock down over 41% of their 3-pointers when traveling. That's amazing. Now, total-wise, Northwestern went 5-2 to the over in their last 7 ball games. No real surprise there. They're also 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Michigan. Meanwhile, the Wolverines went 7-2 to the over in their last 9 outings themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Michigan minus 7.5 and the over 142. All right, next contest, it is going to be Providence versus Xavier, 6:30 Eastern tip-off. Xavier's minus 7 with the total at 139.5. But despite being the 7-point favorite in this one, Xavier actually failed to cover in their last 4 straight. And they also went 1-6 against the spread in their last 7. Now, the Musketeers have been little threat shooting from three-land. They're making just 32% of their three-pointers at home. They're taking on a Providence club who won 11 out of their last 12 this year. They're also limiting their competition to just 36% shooting from the field when they travel. Now, scoring-wise, Nate Watson is averaging 14 points a game along with 6 boards. And when it comes to the total on this one, Providence went 60% to the under in their last 10 outings. Meanwhile, Xavier 7-4 to the under in their last 11 at home. I'm going to lean toward the underdog Providence Friars plus 7 and the under 139.5. All right, next contest, it is going to be Arkansas versus Ole Miss, 7 o'clock East. Arkansas is minus 4 on the road, totals 141.5. The Razorbacks are on a 4-game winning streak, and they're averaging nearly 80 points a game. J.D. Notre is scoring nearly 19 points a night, along with 4 boards and 3 assists. Arkansas has also done a real nice job of rebounding offensively this season. They're taking on an Ole Miss squad who lost 6 out of their last 8 themselves, and they're really struggling to get on the board. The Rebels are averaging only 68 points a game. They're making just 31% of their three-pointers at home. Now, when it comes to head-to-head meetings here, Ole Miss lost 8 out of their last 10 games against Arkansas. So if you're into those, historical trends, those head-to-head trends, you may want to think about that one there. Now, total-wise, Ole Miss saw overs recently with Mississippi State, Auburn, and Dayton. Meanwhile, Arkansas went 60% to the over in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Arkansas minus 4 and the over 141.5. Next matchup, Boston College versus North Carolina, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. UNC's minus 12 with the total at 146.5. But despite their dominance at home, the Tar Heels actually have a losing record against the spread this season, and they're giving up nearly 73 points a game. They're taking on a Boston College team who covered the number recently against the likes of Virginia Tech, Clemson, and Pitt. Good in-conference ACC covers there. Now, the Eagles are also limiting their competition to just 66 points a game. So these guys have been pretty tough, pretty scrappy on the defensive end of the court. Now, scoring-wise, Jaden Zachary, he's drilling 48% of his three-pointers, and he's also averaging just about double-digit points a game for BC, so be on the lookout for him. He's pretty dangerous from downtown. Now, total-wise, Boston College saw unders recently with Louisville, Albany, and Notre Dame. Meanwhile, UNC 7-3 to the under at the Dean Smith Center this year. Give me Boston College plus 12 and the under 146.5. Next game, more ACC action. I'm talking about Miami versus Virginia Tech, 7 o'clock East. Virginia Tech's minus 5.5 with the total at 137. Now, the Hokies lost 5 out of their last 7 ball games, and they successfully covered the point spread just once during that span. Now, the Hokies are also averaging just 69 points a game, and they've struggled getting offensive boards this year. They're taking on a Miami team who covered in 5 out of their last 7 themselves, and they actually posted a record of 10-2 straight up in their last dozen. Now, the Hurricanes are scoring 76 points per contest, and they're led by Cameron McGusty, who scores over 17.5 points a night. Now, the Canes have beaten the likes of UNC, Duke, and Wake Forest this season. When it comes to the total in this one, Miami's officially 4-0 to the under as the official road team. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech saw unders recently with NC State, Virginia, and Dayton. I'm going to lean toward Miami plus 5.5 and the under 137. Next matchup, it is going to be St. Bonaventure versus George Mason, and that's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern start time. The Bonnies, St. Bonaventure, they're -1 with a total at 134.5. Now, the Bonnies won 6 out of their last 9 ball games, and they're actually holding their opponents to just 41% shooting from the field when they travel. Now, offensively, Jalen Attaway is making over 42% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring nearly 15 points a night. Talk about, when this guy can get hot, he can cause some damage from three-land. Now, they've also gotten the W in 9 out of their last 10 meetings with George Mason. And speaking of the Patriots, they're making only 63% of their three-pointers at home. And they've had some difficulty grabbing offensive rebounds at home as well. Now, total-wise, 3 out of George Mason's last 5 ball games fell under the posted number. They're also 5-3 to the under on their home court. Meanwhile, the Bonnies on the other side, they saw their last 3 straight all fall under the total themselves. I'm going to lean towards St. Bonaventure -1 and the under 134.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Vanderbilt versus South Carolina, and that's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern start time. South Carolina is -1 with a total at 128.5. Now, the Gamecocks are 8-2 straight up at home. They've done a solid job defensively this year. They're actually limiting their opponents to just 39% shooting from the field, and they're in the top 30 in the country in defending the field goal. Meanwhile, offensively, Eric Stevenson averages nearly 12 points a game, along with 4 boards and a couple assists. Now, Stevenson's also making a staggering 97% of his free throws. This guy does not miss from the stripe. Now, South Carolina is taking on a Vandy squad who's struggled offensively themselves. The Commodores are averaging only 68 points a game, and they're making just 40% of their field goals. Now, Vandy's also gotten the W in just 1 out of their last 5 ball games. And when it comes to the total in this one, Vandy went 4-0 to the under in their last 4 straight. Meanwhile, South Carolina is 67% to the under for the entire season. I'm going to lean towards South Carolina -1 and the under 128.5. Next contest, it is going to be UCF versus Wichita State, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Now, we're doing an early video here. I'm not sure if this line is right, but we're going to cap it anyway. I got Wichita at -3 with a total at 135.5. Now, the Shockers have lost their last 4 straight, and they've been terrible against the point spread lately. And as a matter of fact, Wichita State failed to cover in 7 out of their last 9. And they're shooting just 38% from the field this year at home. Now, they're taking on a UCF squad who won 7 out of their last 10 themselves. And they've done a pretty nice job defensively. They're limiting their competition to just 29% shooting from three-land. And they're also holding their opponents to only 66 points a game. Now, scoring-wise, Darren Green Jr. and Darius Perry, they're both making 40% of their three-pointers respectively, and they're also averaging double-digit points a game. I don't know how you defend that if those two get hot. You only need one of those guys to get hot. But anyway, total-wise, UCF went 5-1 to the under in their last 6 outings. Unders against the likes of Tulane, USF, and Memphis. Meanwhile, Wichita State went 60% to the under in their last 10 themselves. Not sure if this is a correct line, but I'm all over it. Give me UCF +3 in the under 135.5. Next game, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, 8 o'clock Eastern tip. Oklahoma State's -2 with a total at 123.5. But despite being favored in this one, Oklahoma State lost 5 out of their last 8 ball games, and they're scoring only 68 points a game. Now, the Cowboys have also been little threat shooting from three-land, as they're making just 28% of their three-pointers this year. They're taking on an Iowa State school who's amongst the best defensive teams in the entire country. The Cyclones are giving up just 59 points a game, and they're limiting their competition to just 26% shooting from three-land. Now, scoring-wise, Isaiah Brockington is averaging nearly 17 points a game, along with 8 rebounds. When it comes to the total in this one, the Cyclones saw unders recently against TCU, Kansas, and Texas Tech. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State went 7-1 to the under in their last 8 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Iowa State +2 in the under 123.5. Next ball game, little Big 12 action. I'm talking about, well, more Big 12 action, I should say. Give me Oklahoma versus West Virginia, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. West Virginia is -1.5, totals 131. And although I wouldn't quite describe the Mountaineers as offensive juggernauts, they've certainly played a really tough defense in Morgantown this year. The Mountaineers are allowing only 61 points a game at home. They currently find themselves 10-1 straight up this year in front of their home crowd. Now, scoring-wise, Taz Sherman, he's been lighting it up this year. He's averaging nearly 20 points a game, along with 2 rebounds and a couple assists. They're taking on a Sooner team who lost their last 4 straight. And they're making only 29% of their three-pointers when they travel. Now, injury-wise, Mason and Nolan are questionable for the Sooners. Chargeois is out. And when it comes to the total in this one, oddly enough, the Sooners did see overs recently against the likes of Iowa State, Baylor, and Kansas State. Meanwhile, West Virginia, they went 6-1 to the over in their last 7 themselves. I'm going to lean toward West Virginia -1.5 in the over 131. Next game, Big East action. I'm talking about Marquette versus Seton Hall, 8:30 Eastern tip-off. Seton Hall is -3.5 with the total at 146. But despite being favored in this one, the Pirates may have to go to work here without Aiken and Weston. Both of those guys are questionable to play here Wednesday. That could be very impactful. Now, the Pirates also failed to cover in 6 out of their last 8 ball games. And they're making just 31% of their three-pointers this year. They're taking on a Marquette team who's on a 6-game winning streak themselves. And they successfully covered the point spread in all of those victories. Marquette's currently scoring nearly 75 points a game on the road. And they also find themselves in the top 35 in the nation in road three-point shooting. And of course, speaking of 3 balls, you're not going to hear this name a lot in these prediction breakdowns, but I'm telling you right now, Greg Elliott, he's drilling 52% of his shots from 3-land, and he averages nearly double-digit points a game. He's kind of like a Steve Kerr, man. You put him in the game, work to get to that spot, and the guy always delivers. So keep an eye on Elliott. Now, defensively, on the other end of the court, the Golden Eagles actually limit their opponents to just 40% shooting from the field. Of course, when it comes to the number in this one, Marquette saw overs with DePaul, Georgetown, and Providence. Meanwhile, Seton Hall saw 60% of their home games get over the line themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Marquette +3.5 in the over 146. Next matchup, Big Ten action, Penn State versus Indiana, 8:30 East. Indiana's -7.5, totals 125. The Hoosiers won 7 out of their last 10 ball games. And they're doing a real nice job at Assembly Hall this year. They're actually 12-1 straight up in front of their home crowd. And they covered the point spread in 77% of those ball games. That's actually what's most important to us bettors. But anyway, they've also played smothering defense at home as well. They're giving up only 58 points a game on their home court. And they're currently in the top 20 in the nation in defensive field goal percentage at home. Now, scoring-wise, Trace Jackson Davis is averaging over 18.5 points a game, along with 8 boards. They're taking on a Penn State team who lost 3 out of their last 4, and they got the W only once on the road this year. Wouldn't quite call them road warriors, at least not yet. They could turn around, who knows? But the Nittany Lions, they're barely averaging 60 points a game away from home, and they're shooting only 40% from the field in that category. Now, total-wise, Penn State's 3-0 to the under in their last couple of ball games. Meanwhile, Indiana saw unders recently with Purdue, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. I'm going to lean toward Indiana -7.5 in the under 125. Next contest, it is going to be VCU versus Davidson, 8:30 Eastern tip-off. Davidson's -4 with the total at 127.5. Now, the red-hot Davidson Wildcats are on a 15-game winning streak, and they successfully covered the number in nearly 80% of those contests. Davidson's also undefeated at home this year. They currently find themselves in the top 5 in the nation in home offensive field goal percentage. Now, they're also drilling 40% of their three-pointers in front of their home crowd. Michael Jones is draining 51% of his three balls this year, and he's averaging well over a dozen points a game. Now, the Wildcats are currently making over 53% of their field goals on their home court. This is a team that can shoot lights out. When they're hot, they're going to bury you. Now, they're taking on a Virginia Commonwealth team who lost 2 out of their last 3, and they actually struggled to get on the scoreboard. This is a team that's not built for a track meet like Davidson is. But the Rams are averaging only 62 points a game on the road, and they're amongst the worst in the Atlantic 10 in offensive rebounding. Now, total-wise, VCU did see overs with George Washington, LaSalle, and Old Dominion. Meanwhile, Davidson has gone 63% to the over for the entire season themselves. I'm going to lean toward Davidson -4 and the over 127.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Florida State versus Georgia Tech, and that's going to be a 9 o'clock Eastern start time. FSU is -4.5 with the total at 134. But as hot as the Noles have been here recently, they're scoring only 68 points a game on the road, and they're actually having a tough time getting offensive boards. They're taking on a Georgia Tech team who covered in 4 out of their last 7 themselves, and they're limiting their competition to just 27% shooting from three-land at home. Now, scoring-wise, Michael DeVoe, he's been really good this year. He's draining nearly 41% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring 19.5 points a game. Now, total-wise, GT saw unders against Duke, Louisville, and USC. Meanwhile, Florida State went 4-3 to the under in their last 7. Give me Georgia Tech +4.5, under 134. Next contest, NC State versus Notre Dame, 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Notre Dame's -5.5, totals 148. Now, the Irish are playing some really good basketball right now. They're 8-1 straight up in their last 9, 67% against the number during that stretch. The Irish, they're also undefeated at home this year, and they're scoring 74 points a game in front of their home crowd. Dane Goodwin's draining nearly 49% of his three balls. He's also averaging 15 points a game. Meanwhile, defensively on the other end of the court, the Irish allow only 62 points a game at home. They're taking on an NC State team who lost 7 out of their last 10 themselves, and they're giving up 74 points a game on the road, really struggling defensively. Now, total-wise, the Wolfpack went 60% to the over in their last 10 ball games. No real surprise there. Meanwhile, Notre Dame 6-2 to the over in their last 8 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Notre Dame -5.5 in the over 148. Next contest, it is going to be Texas A&M versus LSU, and that's going to be a 9 o'clock Eastern start time. LSU is -12 with a total at 124 and a hook, but despite being favored by a dozen, the Tigers have struggled over the past couple of weeks. They're currently on a 3-game losing streak, and they may have to go to work again without Xavier Pinson. He's battling some knee problems. They're taking on a Texas A&M team who went 4-1 against the spread in their last 5. And they also posted a record of 11-3 straight up in their last 14. Now, the Aggies are averaging 75 points a game offensively, and they also find themselves in the top 35 in the nation in three-point percentage on the road. Andre Gordon is drilling over 46% of his three balls this year for the Aggies. Meanwhile, defensively, Texas A&M, they give up only 63 points a game. Now, total-wise, A&M went 6-3 to the over in their last 9 ball games. They're also 67% to the over for the entire season. I'm going to lean toward Texas A&M +12 in the over 124.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Utah versus Washington State, 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Washington State's -8 with a total at 134.5. Now, the Cougs won 2 out of their last 3 ball games, and they're limiting their competition to just 39% shooting from the field. Now, scoring-wise, Michael Flowers averages 13 points a game, along with 3 rebounds and 3 assists. Now, the Cougs are scoring over 74 points a game, and they actually do a pretty nice job of grabbing offensive boards. They're taking on a Utah team who lost their last 8 straight, and they also covered the point spread only twice during that span. Now, Utah's allowing 76 points a game on the road, and they're letting their opponents make nearly 48% of their field goals against them in that very same category. Now, total-wise, the Utes saw overs with USC, Oregon, and Oregon State. They're also 4-3 to the over as the official road team. I'm going to lean toward Wazoo -8. And the over 134.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup. It is going to be San Diego State versus Utah State. And that's going to be a 10:30 Eastern start time. Maybe we saved the best for last because, guys, we got ourselves a good old-fashioned pick'em contest in this one with the total at 126. Now, the Utah State Aggies, they're on a 4-game losing streak. And they also failed to cover in 5 out of their last 6. Utah State also has had some issues guarding the 3-ball this year as well. They're taking on a very tough San Diego State team who won 6 out of their last 7 ball games. And they arguably play the best defense in Division I. The Aztecs are allowing only 56 points a game, and they're limiting their competition to just 36% shooting from the field. Can you imagine only shooting 36% from the field against somebody? It would be so frustrating. That's crazy. Anyway, scoring-wise, Matt Bradley, he's averaging 15 points a game, along with 5 boards and a couple assists. And when it comes to the total in this one, no real surprise here. San Diego State 6-3 to the under in their last 9. They're also 73% to the under for the entire year. Meanwhile, Utah State saw 6 out of their last 7 at home fall under the total themselves. I'm going to lean towards San Diego State winning that one outright in the under 126. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap, powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we are currently 3-0 in our last 3 $1.99 daily best plays following Monday's sports betting action. I like Tennessee -8 under 135.5. Creighton -5.5 under 125 and a hook. Michigan -7.5 over 142. Providence +7 under 139 and a hook. Arkansas -4 over 141.5. Boston College +12 under 146 and a hook. Miami Hurricanes +5.5 under 137. St. Bonaventure -1 under 134.5. South Carolina -1 under 128 and a hook. UCF Central Florida +3 under 135.5. Iowa State +2 under 123 and a hook. West Virginia -1.5 over 131. Marquette +3.5 over 146. Indiana -7.5 under 125. Davidson -4 over 127.5. Georgia Tech +4.5 under 134. Notre Dame -5.5 over 148. Texas A&M +12 over 124.5. Washington State -8 over 134 and a hook. And before I give you my next and final free pick for the video, one final reminder that we are also 3-0 in our last 3 board member tier package picks on brockpage.com as well, following Monday's sports betting action. And just a reminder, guys, board members get access to every single pick that I give out on my website all the way through the end of January. I'm going to lean toward Texas A&M +12 in the over 124. I just said that. It's not Texas A&M. It is San Diego State winning the pick'em contest and the under 126. You know what? It's like the Buffalo Bills, man. You got to finish. I don't care how good you played. You got to finish. And I didn't finish very strongly there, but it is what it is. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my website at brockpage.com. Guys, it's a great website. There's a lot of great information on there. Even if you just want to support me, feel free to sign up for that $1.99 package and don't even worry about the picks. Do whatever you have to do, but you can use that website just to show support to me. I tell you what, the more active that my website is, the better chance there is that I can produce videos for you each and every day here on YouTube, especially a day in advance. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not I'm not opening the door into my personal life, but I certainly could use more patrons. I'm just throwing that out there. I really could, because if I don't get more patrons, I'm not going to be able to do as many videos here as I'd like, and certainly not in a timely fashion. But anyway, it is what it is. Nature of the beast. Most importantly, guys, I gotta thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Tuesday or Wednesday to you, depending on when you're watching this video. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.